Namaste students. I am Dr. Shubhada Deshpande from Vikas College of Arts, Science and Commerce, Vikhroli, which is affiliated to University of Mumbai. I welcome you all to this video tutorial on feedback. It's a pleasure speaking to you all through this video tutorial project of IDOL, University of Mumbai. In the previous lecture, we discussed how communication is necessary in human life and also in the corporate world. Now in this lecture, we are going to discuss how feedback is an important component in the process of communication and in communication in general. What is feedback? Feedback is the response given by the receiver to the sender once he or she understands the message sent by the sender. Though the final component, it is an important aspect in the process of communication, and the process of communication cannot be complete unless the receiver gives feedback to the sender. For example, the teacher teaches a subject in the class, but we cannot call it a process of communication unless and until the students appear for the examination and respond to the question paper, whether leaving the paper blank or writing the correct answers. That doesn't matter. But response in the form of appearing for the examination will give the feedback. If the student writes correct answers, it will be positive feedback. If the answers are wrong, it will be negative feedback. In the corporate world, organizations need consistent feedback from their customers in order to enhance their business activities. This is because it is the customer's feedback that indicates to the organization which aspects of their products or services are received positively and thus can be retained, and which other aspects customers are not happy with. The organization will thus need to work towards strengthening those areas which are indicated as the weaknesses in the product or services. In order to collect this feedback, organizations administer questionnaires, conduct opinion polls, and interviews to know about how the customers decide their priorities while purchasing, how their experience with the product was. Nowadays, feedback is also obtained through apps, or some company websites have a dedicated provision for feedback. Feedback can also take the form of market research. In case of the performance of employees, the organization can give them feedback in the form of evaluating their performance. Let us see what are the different types of feedback on the basis of the way in which it is collected, as well as on the basis of nature of feedback or the time frame in which feedback is given. Based on its nature, feedback can be either positive or negative. If the receiver is in agreement with the sender's message, or when the receiver likes the message, or when the message sent by the sender is properly understood by the receiver, he or she will give positive feedback. It can be in the form of nodding the head in agreement or following the instructions in the correct manner. Or it can also be giving the correct reply to a question asked. Positive feedback is an indicator of success and gives the sender a signal that the process of communication is going on correctly and needs no change, and that she can continue with it. But if the feedback is negative, It's a kind of signal for the sender that there is something wrong, due to which the message is not getting received or understood by the receiver. It does acts as a corrective in the process and tells the sender that there is a need for change or modification in the content or the medium used or the method of communication which is being followed by the sender. For example, while teaching in the classroom, the teacher asks the students a question, which is to check whether they have understood the concept taught or not. If maximum of them are able to answer the question correctly, it is positive feedback and satisfies the teacher. That will signal that the process of communication is taking place without any problem and can be continued. But if maximum of them are able to answer the question correctly, it is a positive feedback and satisfied the teacher, thus signaling that the process of communication is taking place without any problem and can be continued. But if maximum of them cannot answer the question correctly, then it is to be taken seriously by the teacher, because then there is a need to bring in some change. Feedback can also be categorized as immediate and delayed. It depends on the method of communication followed. We all know if the sender and the receiver are face to face, the feedback can be immediately obtained, because the non-verbal cues like body language help the sender in the getting of feedback from the receiver, and that too immediately or even simultaneously while delivering the message itself. The teachers in class, for example, can immediately make out while teaching if any of the students is not attentive or is not interested in the topic being taught. The facial expressions of the students, eye contact with the teacher, movements like nodding head or shaking the head indicate to the teacher about the involvement of students in teaching, and thus indicate that the message is getting across. Even in telephonic conversation, you can get the feedback immediately, because the person at the receiving end is out there present to respond to your message. Sometimes even silence on the part of the receiver also conveys his or her response. But when you communicate in writing, feedback cannot be expected immediately. This is because the process of writing itself is time consuming, and then if it is to be sent by post or even to be given by hand or to be sent online, the process will take some time, and there again it depends on the receiver as to when he or she reads the message and responds. So, feedback in written communication is always delayed. To refer to the corporate scenario, if an organization wants to collect the customer's feedback on their products or services, and they upload a questionnaire for the same on their website, or on social media and call for the responses, it will result in delayed feedback because one cannot expect all the customers to be online at the same time. And even if they are, they may not respond to the questionnaire at the same time. Some of them rather may not even opt for responding to it. We also need to consider the difference between oral and written feedback. When the feedback is obtained orally from the receiver, it proves to be very powerful because the paralanguage, which means the tone or pitch of voice, helps the receiver in conveying the message more meaningfully and more effectively. If this oral feedback is in the face-to-face situation, it is even more effective because, as I mentioned, the body language and other non-verbal cues make the message more effective. In the corporate world, oral feedback is always taken positively because the senior can effectively explain why the junior needs to improve his or her behavior. Different shades of meaning are conveyed rightly through oral feedback, and the junior does not feel threatened. Written feedback, on the other hand, is taken more seriously because written feedback, like a show cause notice, will always be maintained as a record. Both oral and written feedback are thus equally important for improvement in the performance of the employees. Feedback can also be formal and informal. When the class teacher calls parents' meeting to give feedback on the students' overall performance to the parents and maintains minutes of the meeting, it will be an example of formal feedback. But if a parent calls up the teacher to know about his son's or daughter's performance and behavior in the class, the feedback given by the teacher will be informal feedback. When an organization administers a questionnaire to its customers, it is formal feedback, and the opinion expressed by a customer relating to a product or service in a discussion with a friend can be called an example of informal feedback. Feedback is also categorized by Keaton on the basis of the form in which it is given. It can be descriptive, evaluative, and prescriptive. Descriptive feedback refers to a situation wherein the receiver describes how a person communicates. To take another example, you watch a movie and while speaking to a friend on a phone, you inform him about having been to watch the movie. The friend naturally asks you how it was. You describe the action, characterization, and the theme of the movie. That can be called descriptive feedback. Evaluative feedback, on the other hand, goes even further to assess or to evaluate, to judge the communication. So, if you happen to share your evaluative opinions regarding the movie with your friend, it would be evaluative feedback. You clearly tell your friend whether you liked it or not, and what exactly were the factors that made you dislike or like the movie. In case of prescriptive feedback, the receiver provides advice to the sender as to how the process of communication should be. In terms of the movie that we are referring to here, if you explain to your friend how the movie was and how it was not good or as you expected it to be and how it could be modified or should have been, it is an example of prescriptive feedback. And now, as feedback to this communication by me, in order to know what you have gained so far in this video, please complete a small task. You can share your thoughts here by choosing the correct option from those given below these two questions. And also, please do not forget to participate in the discussion forum by sharing your views or thoughts relating to the question given in the discussion forum. Thank you.